Hello, my friends. This is Joseph Shore speaking to you again about our beloved opera. I wanted to give some practical suggestions today about how to stage opera in an effective way. I say in an effective way because there are many crazy ways opera has been staged, and we've all, unfortunately, been witnesses to many of those terrible miscreants on stage. From a Rigoletto that was sung on the moon with both Rigoletto and Gilda in NASA spacesuits, can you believe it, to some production of Traviata where the whole set was a bed and everyone, all of the singers, were naked. We've been through this stuff. And so I would not call that acceptable opera. To me, it's not art at all. It's an insult to art. And if there is anything at all behind it, it is certainly of the ego and a subterranean desire to destroy opera. You know, if you were teaching painting to children and you gave them, say, a picture of the Mona Lisa within a book, and you asked them to draw some picture that came to your mind when you saw the Mona Lisa. And that might be many things. It might be a picture of their mother or, whatever the child might draw. But what would happen if you, as the teacher, simply told everybody that all of their drawings were wonderful and everybody got an A or an A+. Obviously, there would be no constructive criticism that would allow the children to develop it with whatever talent they had. You might still, if you really tried, be able to pick out a talented student, but it might be hard. Similarly, in opera, seeing these monstrosities that are staged, naked people singing, bouncing on a bed, or singing in the moon, on the moon with space helmets, these monstrosities are not what I call effective opera. They may be effective in some ways in making you hate modern opera or in making you make your spouse or whoever took you promise never to take you to that kind of opera ever again. It'd be effective in that. But I'm thinking now, since I spent so many years as a university voice professor, I'm thinking now of the university student who graduates with maybe a Bachelor of Music or a Bachelor of Arts in Drama, and they really want to get into creating opera, staging opera, but they have some courage in their convictions, and they have some morality. They're not just trying to put something offensive on the stage and call it art. I know a lot of students with much more integrity than the people many times in the adult world who are responsible for the production of opera. So the first thing I would say to you in your establishment of your own company, let's say it this way. You're in a moderately big-sized city. There's artistic room for someone to put on a new opera, uh, sort of your new opera company. So how would you proceed? First of all, you should hold auditions. Don't just cast from the people that you know. There again is a problem in opera. There must be an honest desire to discover undiscovered talent. So hold an audition in the city, or even put some circulars and go outside of the city where you're going to be producing. Allow anyone who wishes to audition for you. Record the audition and make notes. These things are all important. And after you have spent however long it takes, might be 2 days, might be 4 or 5 days if it's a big city, and if there's a lot of interest. And then you will have 2 or 3 people with you who you respect and who are in this journey with you, and you'll go down and you'll make honest assessments on the people that audition for you. Honest assessments. You won't favor someone just because you know him. You won't disfavor someone just because you don't like them. And you need to see in that audition, if you can discover how good they are as a singer, of course, but if they have imagination and intelligence and a good will about working on the stage, that is what is essential. You see, in today's climate, I've already spoken about this. In New York, some of the big cities, the people who are doing the auditions are very insecure and they're very dishonest, and they're very easily swayed by dishonest factors. And they may be very, even subconsciously, they may be very anti-intellectual. They may be afraid of an artist with a good brain who can think. An intelligent person can be very threatening to some insecure people if they are auditioning. So that's one of the things that you guys have to make a pact about. You will look for intelligence and as well as a good voice and as well as a good musician. Now, their acting, you should be able to get, not because they block out their arias during an audition and run around the small room. That's the kind of person I would not choose, because it looks stupid. You should be able to tell in the way they express through their face and the way they do their phrasings, if they're intelligent people and will be able to be utilized within a good staging, a good type of staging. And then the next thing that you and your friends should do is pay special attention to the people who audition for you that you don't know. Maybe they've never auditioned for another opera company in their entire life. Maybe this was one time a guy or a gal said to himself, you know, everybody's telling me I should sing opera. I've never had the guts to audition. I'm going to go to this new audition, and I'm just going to see for the hell of it. what happens? And they get up there and they sing maybe the one aria they know, but something happens. And you say, listen to that guy. He has quite an instrument. Do you think that if we paid him a little extra attention, we might really have something with him? Maybe. You know, maybe his musicianship was just a little off here or there, or maybe his languages weren't perfect, but he had this voice, and all of a sudden he just sang, Nemico della Patria, and you thought, who the hell is that? We didn't know there was anybody like that in this city. So if you come across raw talent, by all means, hire them. You may decide later how you're going to work with them and what part you're going to give to them, but make sure that you respect raw talent when it comes to you. So then, presumably, you have your opera cast now. Cast with honestly good, or at least competent singers, who are good musicians, have good intentions, who are not troublemakers, not egomaniacs, okay? And you take the role as the stage director. And maybe you had some instruction in that in college, and maybe you didn't. Maybe all you've learned is what you've read about, or maybe you had some practice in straight acting, and you directed a scene that some of your students were in. Whatever level of preparation you have, you've got to figure out how to stage opera, because it's different from straight acting only in the timing. Because right now, here in a few seconds, I can say quite a few sentences. But if I slow it down, if I sing the words, all of a sudden, the timing is stretched out. And so you've got this effect of how do you keep action realistic and believable in an environment in which communication takes place so much slower than it does in reality. And you might think at first that just moving singers to poses and having them to take a pose for a number of seconds and let them sing, and then moving them to another pose and letting them sing. You might think that's how you stage opera. Please don't. We've all had enough of that. In an earlier era where acting was not at all respected in opera, opera singers would hold up one hand for the high notes, ah! And one hand down for the low notes. Oh. You know, and that was acting. Up, down, up, down, up, down. And maybe some poor tenor got his directions mixed up and one time would sing, Cielo amor, and you'd all chuckle about it because he didn't know up from down. But my point is, you have to discover a way of staging opera that will seem natural, that the tempo is so slowed down by the music and yet the emotions are true to life, and even the secondary actions, the usage of your hands, your arms, are in the timing, the normal timing of speech. So if I say,
Si può, si può,
that's the timing. Still, it's proper that you would use in speech. Si può?
si può. Signore, signori.
So you don't want to try to slow down the gestures to match the slow effect of the singing. And that, believe it or not, that will come to some people, that little gem, as a revelation. And then the next thing you have to figure out is how you're going to deal with emotions in opera as a stage director. You know that at the simple level of the text, that there is textual meaning, which the actors have to get across in a meaningful way so that the audience can suspend disbelief and make a connection to the emotion that the character on stage, though he or she is singing, a connection on stage to that character. And if the character on stage is not connected to their own heart, their own soul, if they are just giving you representational actions and, the stuff of old opera, then there's not going to be anything for the audience to connect to. I once did a big production at a big company. I won't say its name because the guy would probably sue me. At any rate, there was a big time, I mean the biggest time, Broadway director came to do our staging of a great big Puccini opera. I won't mention the name because then you know who the director was. And it was his first time in directing opera. He was a Broadway director, but he was famous. So the opera company thought they were doing something great by bringing this great famous man to do his first opera. They thought it would bring in packed houses and they'd make a lot of money. So he gets to the first day of staging, and we find out he doesn't have a clue how to stage opera. And we give him all the help in the world. We give him the actual conductor there at the staging and a pianist, so the conductor can actually be conducting the pianist in the actual tempi that he's going to be using during the opera, and so that we get an idea, even in blocking, about the way the conductor wants it to be done. So we're killing two birds with one stone. But I don't expect that would have happened unless we would have had Mr. Famous stage director there. But we did. And so we had that going for us. But the stage director, who knew nothing, Mr. Broadway, would say things in the breaks like, "Oh, it's so hard to stage this opera because you've got all these notes cluttering up the page. What am I to do with them?" And more than one time, he would stop the so-called blocking and turn to the conductor and say, "Can you repeat those few measures, maybe 5 minutes more or something, because I need some more time on stage." And the conductor would just look at him like he was from Mars and say, "No, non posso farlo," because he only spoke Italian in this company where I was. And the director, who spoke no Italian, said, "What'd you say?" And we told him, he said, "No, he can't do that." Oh, well, gosh, what am I going to do here? I need more time. So Mr. Big, famous Broadway director decided that he would simply get rid of opera, get rid of acting. That was the problem. And then, if he didn't have to worry about real acting, he could probably put us all in motion in the timing of the opera. So what he did was he choreographed each movement of each character throughout the opera, choreographed measure by measure. And it took us 8 weeks of rehearsal to do that, breaking union rules by working 8 hours at a time without any breaks, and by working 7 days a week without any day off. Nobody complained to AGMA about it, the union. And we just barely had enough time to choreograph the whole opera the day before final dress rehearsal. So, final dress rehearsal came, and everybody is going there and going there and doing this and going there and going there. And people are moving on the stage and singing, but there's no acting. And I suppose the great singers knew that, because the artists that had been hired for this very big new production were a mixture of the highest ranking opera professionals and, for the smaller parts, young professionals rising up the ladder. And so the old professionals knew that this was stupid. And the conductor would say,
Okay, now, Carlo,
on this measure, you're to be over there, and you should be looking that way. And the great star would say, no, I don't do it that way. And the conductor would say, the director would say, "What do you mean you won't do it that way?" And then he would leave in a huff and go off and get artists. Oh, I can't tell you. He would get the artistic administrator and say, "Carlo's always saying no to me. Make him stop it. He's got to obey what I say." And the artistic administrator would go up on stage, and she would say to the great, "I'm sorry, but, this is something new for all of us. But you're going to need to do what he asks you to do. And it would be a great favor to me if you would do that." And so, okay, with that level of encouragement, even the big stars began to go through the choreography, knowing it was not opera they were performing. So we reach opening night with this level of working our brains out and our bodies out. The protagonist, the star soprano, gets through opening night and then gets total laryngitis from all the stress. The rest of us survived okay. The reviews were terrific, and the reviewer even loved the great stage directing of the great from Broadway. And so then we had one night off, and then we had 12 more performances to do. So we had a night off and finally got a little rest. Come back in for the second performance, no star soprano. She still had laryngitis from being overworked for 8 weeks and over singing. And now we were up a creek because there weren't very many sopranos who knew this role because the opera was not done often. Finally, they found a soprano at New York City Opera who had sung this role, and they brought her in quickly right by jet. And the problem was, of course, Mr. Famous Stage Director had already left, and he had an assistant who had a clipboard with all the choreography on it. So they took the great star from City Opera, and in one day they marched her through all of the choreography. And she said, you know, I can't guarantee I'm going to be able to remember all this. And he said, it's okay. I'll be in the wings, and if you're too far off your mark, look at me and I'll motion to you and direct you where you should be. And she said, okay, I'll try that. And the curtain went up, second performance started. Here she comes in, makes her entrance, and she tries to do it with the coordination of the way that it has been choreographed, and she just can't do it. And finally, so she simply breaks into very old-fashioned, very good opera. She simply played the part. There's a novel idea. Why don't you play the part? And she did. And all of a sudden there was something real to connect to. All of a sudden the audience was connecting to the reality of the emotion that she was using as she played the part. And that set all of us loose from our choreography, and all of the rest of us began to play our parts, something Mr. Stage Director, Mr. Famous, had not let us do. I'll give you one example before I go on. During I'll name the opera if I do that. Sorry, I won't give that example. But it set us all free, and those remaining 12 performances, or 11 performances, that we did with that substitute soprano who simply played the part, giving us the liberty to play the part, those were great performances. And the audience recognized it, and they were able to really connect and to have a great experience of wonderful opera. But it would never have happened if we had just gone through the choreography and nobody played the part. I'm going to risk giving you this example. For my character in this, he's a rough and tumble guy, not educated. He's a real rough fella. And when he's standing around doing nothing or listening to some boss, he's the kind of guy who's got one or both of his hands in his pockets. You know, that's just the way he is. So I was playing the character during rehearsal, during staging, because I always believed in playing the part during staging. How can it be rehearsal if you're not going to play the part during staging? So I was playing the part, and this character that I had made, this sort of rough and tumble guy, had his hands in his pocket. And Mr. Famous stage director, who didn't give a flip about me playing the part, said, "You've got your hands in your pocket. Don't you know anything at all about stage etiquette? You don't have your hands in your pocket if you're on stage?" And I just smiled real big because I was a junior there, and I said, "Okay, I won't do that." So I took my hands out of the pocket, but I still kept my same character and made him do other secondary features with his hands that still fit the character. Now that's the kind of chasm that exists between real opera staging, people who know that they want genuine acting to take place. The chasm exists between that person and some particular kind of Broadway director who actually, he was that way on Broadway. Everything that he directed on Broadway was also choreographed. There was no concern for any real action, any real acting, and any of those things that he did either. So that was just the way he did theater, which, made many of us go, ugh. So nevertheless, you come to this place now where you have to make a decision how you're going to direct it. May I give you a suggestion that you do not jump to going towards movements, or what we used to call blocking. Don't go to blocking as your first step. Instead, have a few sessions where you make the characters improvise their actions with one another, and you'll see quickly who are the sharp nails in the box, because the intelligent people will be able to make some real judgments in quick time, and they'll be able to improvise. But if you do that after, say you do that for 3 or 4 times within the first week, you'll begin to see the kind of movement and action that might be naturalized, that might work in a realistic way. Then at that level you can start tentative blocking, asking your singers, actors at all times to be with the word, be with the emotion, even while you're doing the blocking. And if some of them are old-fashioned enough to ask you, "What's my motivation?" then tell them, "You discover your motivation, and you show me what it is." Now, if they're smart, they'll know that you've given them a great compliment when you give them that freedom. Some of them may not be up to it and say, you got to tell me, what do you want me to do? What's my motivation? And then you can maybe give a suggestion to help that person along, and then maybe they'll come up with something. "Oh yeah, I could think of this." Okay? So now you've discovered a way of making people go around the stage with good musicianship, with good languages, and with realistic relationship in the usage of the word and the emotion. And as you run that, the characters will begin to establish themselves greater levels of complexity within their own interaction as characters. You'll find that the best way that you can stage an opera is to listen to your characters and what they want to do. I was very fortunate to be able to do Rigoletto in my European debut at the Grand Opera House in Belfast, one of the most beautiful opera houses you ever saw. And I was even more fortunate to draw a stage director. In Europe, they call themselves producers. I was very, very lucky to draw as a producer the great, and I sincerely mean the great, Nicholas Hytner. Now, Nicholas Hytner, if you follow the world of drama, went on to be an award-winning director of movies, films, Madness of King George, the Crucible, and he became head of Britain's National Theatre. So, talk about drawing someone with real talent as a director. I had done that. And Nicholas was, I should say Mr. Hytner, because he deserves that. Mr. Hytner was intelligent enough to have done his homework, and he saw that I had done 10 productions of Rigoletto. And this was his first production for staging it. So he was very eager to learn how I viewed the role and how I played the role. And he was very happy to allow me to do the role as I was accustomed to playing it, but I still stayed within his desire for motion, this, that way, or that, and I worked in a very unconventional set, which involved going up to 2 different levels for the action, and very unconventional props. And none of that was a problem. If you are a genuine actor and you know the role and you can play the role, the circumstances really don't matter to you. You can play Rigoletto with chains that he pulls the body of the Duke out on the stage, if that's the way the director wants it. Won't get in your way at all. Or if there are 2 levels, an upper level and a lower level, and Spada Fucile dispatches the dagger to Gilda on the upper level, it's not any big deal for you to go and to retrieve the body and bring it down to your level on the stage. See, these sorts of things any actor is accustomed to do because we don't want to sing in just one production our whole life. How boring would that be? So whatever you do, as you learn to, as you get through this first opera that you're going to be staging in your new opera company, yes, you have it all written down, but don't ever try to reproduce it. Learn from it, but don't try to reproduce it like a clone any other place. So you've established quite a lot just by doing opera this way. Now, what about the ensemble approach? Ensemble opera, where no performer, no singer is better than anybody else. You bring everybody down to the same level of competency in singing. That, my dear friend, is not historic opera because it doesn't respect talent. And you know that guy that you hired because he had an unexpected voice? Well, you know, you might have him cover a part, and you might work with him, and you might discover that after you've worked with him, he's pretty good on stage, and he can cover that part of Rigoletto really, really well.
Parisiamo.
And something might happen to the Rigoletto on one of your performances. Something's happened. And now you've got a cover who's ready to come in, make his debut in opera in a big role, and he's going to save your bacon. Because otherwise you would have to cancel the whole show and give back all the money, and then your hopes for establishing a new opera company in that town are down the drain. So I hope that this will give you some idea that A, you can do this. You can make your own opera company in a moderately sized city, say 200,000 to 1,000,000 people. That's a moderate-sized city in North America. And a bigger city than that, you definitely can do it. And you can respect the heritage of opera. You can ask for as good a singing as you can get. You can ask for honesty in portrayal of a character's emotion. You can be happy if your singer-actors learn to play the part. You won't have to block them into some sort of prefabricated choreography and just have motions going on the stage. You can do it. And you may have surprised everyone in the community that now there's another opera company and you don't have to go to the established company in that city where the quality of opera is terrible. You've got some other city, some other company now you can go to. And you will then have made a contribution to the area of the arts that you like and that you want to help. And you can have a budding career doing something that helps the art form. And that's my little sermon for you today. Bye-bye.